You should know that we only allow 30 days for you to get comfortable. The rest you're supposed to work, so get to work.
You went in and out. Sorry about that.
Okay. Welcome aboard.
Thank
We
you. I appreciate it.
also want to remind everybody that the meeting will be recorded, just so everybody knows. Got it? Okay. Kristen, you're in charge. Tell us, we got a lot of money. Oh, no, I have to do the consent agreement first. I'm sorry, the consent agenda, which is included in your materials. Does anybody feel like we need to pull any of those subjects out and discuss them individually? Looks like everybody's been busy. That's good stuff. Okay, can we have a motion to accept the consent agenda then?
So
So
moved.
Second.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, we need to chunk these votes out today.
Chunk the votes out? I don't know what that means.
Yeah, so the contracts, we'll need several abstentions. So we want to consider them separately.
Well, you want to run through what we have to consider separately then?
Sure. So the first matters are related to this board meeting, the minutes, accepting some money, changes to the Tanf, excuse me, WEO and Tanf youth eligibility policy, and some actions taken by the executive committee. Are there any abstentions or objections?
Hearing none.
Perfect. Moving on to contracts. We have the healthcare industry partnership contracts, K-12 career exploration, career services expansion. Any objections or abstentions there? Moving on to Learn and Earn 2022 providers. The
Hey,
list
Jen,
is
before you go there, do you want to take a vote on the two categories you just went through?
Sure. Well, I'm just asking if there are any objections or abstentions.
Oh,
here.
fine.
We'll
Okay,
assume they're
okay.
good. Okay, perfect. Moving on to Learn and Earn, the 2022 providers included in your packet.
Abstain for Quentin Youth Places.
Thanks. Kim.
I abstain as well, Debbie Kaplan.
Any others?
Laura, you're on mute, Laura.
Sorry, I'm abstaining as well.
All right. Any others? Moving on to transitional jobs. The contract addendums. 2022 contracts, PY 22 earn and work ready. Any
Abstentions, Carrie.
Industry recognized training providers.
Abstain.
If you're abstaining,
I abstain as well.
Mr. Holt, you should probably abstain as well. We are a Title I adult and dislocated worker. We are in Tanf youth. Clean energy. Mr. Chairman, I believe our consent agenda is approved.
Great. That was a challenging consent agenda. It's supposed to be easy then. Hey, Rob, do you want to take 2 minutes about the healthcare initiative? I think everyone should know about that. I don't know if everybody does.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So recently, I would say in the past, 45 days, myself and Chairman Malone have convened 2 separate groups. One with Carlow University, as well as AHN and a couple other healthcare networks, to really discuss the pipelines in regards to the healthcare workforce that is needed in the region overall. And it's led to some really good work, some very specific work with PPS that we're going in with 11th and 12th graders and creating dual enrollment programs. And I know CCAC will be a partner in that, and several other training providers to really start career pathwaying young people into family sustaining jobs. We're talking CNA, LPN, surgical tech, all of those different occupations that individuals will be able to, once out of high school, walk right into those jobs and either be hired on right into those specific jobs, or be enrolled in the training and maybe have another year left of training where they can basically work and go to school at the same time. And some of these things will take place at the hospital, some will be off-site, but we're working with all the partners right now to kind of create that programming across several PPS schools. In addition to that, our research department, our policy and research department is doing some real pipeline work with just really trying to understand, with the amount of jobs needed, how many people are in cohorts currently to fill those jobs also. So it really kind of comes down to a math equation. How many jobs are needed? How many people are we graduating, annually to go into these jobs? And we're really trying to do some tracking in regards to where they're going. It's kind of one of those situations where you have to get the sector together to understand that poaching and poaching each other and raising wages, things like that, you're just shuffling around the same group of people. People are leaving one job to go get a benefit from another job, and we understand that human behavior, but we want everyone to kind of come together, again, agree on specific curriculum for specific occupations that they don't have aligned right now, and understand that they have to grow the pool together. So we've had success with BankWorks with that approach, and we hope to have the same success in healthcare in many of the jobs that they have as far as openings right now, and really pulling the sector together, as well as our education partners to really help build the capacity in the region.
Yeah, that's a good summary. We're kind of stealing a page out of your book, Jeff, and see if we can duplicate what you've done in Cat, what you did at your project at PNC. So
I raise a question here. So great program and great to see all of the collaboration to really understand supply and demand and all the barriers along the way to fulfilling those workforce needs. I know about just prior to the pandemic, when we were meeting with the Healthcare Council and Angela Mike at PPS and several others, one of the barriers at that time was the pay structure for instructors at the high school level for the career and tech ed program, but also at the community college level because of the credentials required for some of the instruction in another, what you could make an industry versus, in what might be a part-time position. And has that been addressed, or is it part of something that will be or needs to be addressed? And if so, how do we all help on something like that? It may not be a barrier anymore, so I don't know, but.
That's a really long question, and the short answer is yes, not resolved, but in discussion. We have a supply problem and we have a demand problem, and what it's caused in healthcare is an enormous problem. So about 54% of healthcare is labor. So we cannot find people. Number one, both systems increased compensation by roughly 30% in a matter of weeks. These traveling nurses that you're hearing about, those nurses make between 3 and 5 times what a nurse was making at either system. So both systems are stealing from each other. They're offering sign-on bonuses, and it's really driving costs, but it isn't addressing the fundamental problem. We just don't have enough people interested in those careers. So Rob and I have been working with the mayor's office to try to find a way to get into PPS, a lot of our underserved neighborhoods, tie this to social determinants, and find a way where we can give opportunities to people that really will impact the demand. And by the way, the demand is not just financial. You have people that sitting in waiting rooms that have had strokes for overnight because they can't get a room. So this is really a threat to health, and it's really going to drive healthcare costs nationally. It's not just Pittsburgh, it's everywhere. So I don't know if that answers your question quite, Linda, but we're well aware that it's not just nurses. We use nurses collectively, but it's all the various people in the workforce system for healthcare that are making it harder to keep nurses because they're doing jobs they're not supposed to do. and it's causing a real strain, a lot of burnout. People are leaving the industry. It's a very acute problem. We're trying to turn it into an opportunity for us to elevate a lot of the opportunities in our public school system. Does that help, Linda?
Yeah, my question was more focused on the instructors that
Yeah,
there
no,
was-
we're including
Okay.
finding ways to expand the capacity of the supply side.
I can comment.
Connected to that, I have a question. I think my hand is up.
All right.
I know that you talked earlier with Pioneer Foundation and UPMC about work that is being done by several organizations around the training of community healthcare workers. And so these would, of course, be people in the community who are identified in the community, who stay in the community and work in the community and have the trust of people in their neighborhoods. Other communities have done a good job in training these people. So this was an earlier discussion. Has there been any follow-up on that at all?
Yes and no. I don't think we've kept as much contact with Pioneer as we should, and we should reach out to them again. But this is certainly involving both systems in this project, and any community hospitals that have an interest as well. So this is not indigenous to either AHN or UPMC. We're trying to drive the whole region.
That's
The mayor's
great.
been
Thank you.
actually very responsive. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but I feel like we may actually get into PPS in a legitimate way now.
Well, Dr. Sahel, of course, at Pioneer has been very, very responsive to
Right.
and pushing the social determinants of healthcare.
What I've asked Rob to do is to create curriculum so that we can hire the community healthcare workers and then give them a career path, so they can see that they can move up the ladder as well.
Thank you.
Quentin?
Yes, in regards to the credentialing, that still remains a challenge. However, we put in place some options where some courses are being delivered virtually online, as well as specifically scheduling classes at times that the students can come to one of the college campuses to take the classes as part of the dual enrollment component. And when a PPS faculty can be credentialed, that process is moving fairly well.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I didn't mean to get off that far, but I'm glad you all asked. But it's exciting to me that we can try to take advantage of this disaster in a way that can help a lot of people that we're trying to help. Okay, sorry, Kristen. Tell us we have extra money to do this, please.
Steve is going to open us up, Dave. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee, Executive Committee met, and we are recommending the 22-23 budget. A couple quick highlights, and I'll let Kristen give a little bit more detail. Even though WIOA statewide funding was reduced by 7%, we were able to increase our budget by $337,000 from the prior year budget. We're able to do this because of the flexibility of the WIOA grants that are offered with a 2-year grant period. And the Finance Committee also recommending increasing salary and wages from prior year by 6% due to both inflation, crediting our team with doing such a good job and helping to keep and retain very talented people that are really needed right now. So those are the highlights from my end, and Kristen can go into a little bit more detail in terms of the budget. And at the end, we'll need a motion to approve this budget.
Thanks, Steve. So I'll share our beautiful budget here with you.
Work of art, Kristen.
It is a work of art, and it's a great time of year because everything is perfect in the budget. So a couple highlights I'll point out here are the foundation and private contributions of $206,000. We budgeted pretty conservatively here. This is an area we're definitely looking to diversify and have more private dollars come into our budget. So hopefully this will exceed the budget for next year from what we have. As Steve had mentioned, our salaries have increased about $393,000. And as he mentioned, we did give the 6% cost of living increase, but in addition to that, we had a compensation study performed last year. So we right-sized some of our salaries according to the compensation study. But I believe right now everything looks in line. One other area I'll point out of our budget is contracted services here of $103,000. This increased probably over 50% from last year, primarily because our IT consulting last year, we had an in-house specialist, where this year we've decided to outsource it to a contractor and we procured for it. And this way we're getting a full team and it's keeping our costs low, but we're getting our best value. Everything else I will say is pretty much status quo, not too many changes. Our total bottom line here is $26,401,000. And I'm going to switch over to another screen to show you kind of a snapshot of a pie chart, just so you could see exactly where the different funding streams are. So our WIOA cluster here, which consists of our WIOA youth, our WIOA adult in yellow, and our WIOA dislocated worker in blue. And that makes up about 47% of our funding. We have Tanf here in green, which makes up 31%. And then over here, the last large section is Learn and Earn, which is about 15% of our $26 million budget. And then coming down to the graph chart
Kristen,
here.
before you leave that 2% management in general, does that include the overhead of the various agencies we work with as well?
So management in general, Dave, is actually right here, 0%. In this budget, it actually gets allocated out to all these sections. Our management and general expenditures are around 7% of our total budget. But the way they allocate out through all of these different funding streams, because they have to pick up that piece.
Okay. I think that's an impressive number that we ought to make sure the foundations know when we talk to them.
That is very impressive. Yes, our M&G expenditures are very low.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so our budget comparison, as Steve had mentioned, that our WIOA from prior year to the upcoming year's budget, you could kind of see all the increases here. And again, that is due to our flexibility of the 2-year grants. And then we do have a little bit of a drop from TANF, ex-offenders, and sector strategies. Not saying, so the ex-offenders, the one larger grant we had was ending, but that doesn't mean we don't have something in the hopper. It just didn't make it into the budget at the time we were budgeting. So this actually could increase for next year. Are there any questions on the budget or any of the charts and graphs we've looked at? Okay, I'll turn it back over to Steve.
Okay, with no questions, I'm looking for a motion to approve the 2022-23 budget as presented.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
thank you. All those signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you.
Probably worth noting that we did get the 65,000 from Milwaukee. We received that. So
Yes, 2 days ago we received it. So we will have that accounts receivable off of our books by the end of this fiscal year, which is very exciting.
Congratulations.
Well done.
That negotiation, gang.
Yep.
Let's make sure we actually have contracts in the future, so we don't have to get an arm wrestling to get our money.
100%, Dave. We're on that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much, Steve, Kristen. Appreciate it. Deb, youth programs.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Just a few updates from Youth Advisory this morning. First, effective July 1, Partner4Work is going to enter the 4th and final year of the current procurement for youth service providers. And so all providers will remain the same going into the new fiscal year. We expect to release an RFP for WIOA and TANF youth investments, as well as adult providers in late October, with new contracts to begin July 1, 2023. So we did have a good discussion about this at the Youth Advisory Committee, and also welcome Dr. Wesley to the meeting. Any questions before I move on? Okay, and then Learn and Earn 2022 update. Just want to give as always, a sincere note of thanks to Allegheny County and the city of Pittsburgh and our corporate and foundation partners for continuing to recognize and invest in this important summer job program for our youth in the city and the county. I'm pleased to share that we received more than 3,000 applications this year, which is really tremendous and real tribute to, it's a real team effort between the Learn and Earn folks at Partner4Work in the city and the county.
Am I right that that's double last year, Deb?
It's certainly, it's not double from last year. It's about the same, right, Susie? It's about the same, I would say, right?
It's about the same.
Yeah, it's about the same. And, you know, we could get into it, but we were a little slower this year. It took a little bit longer to get those applications going, but again, the team did a great job on that. And so we have more than 1,500 youth who've been deemed eligible for the general program, and that is surpassing our goal this year. So that's the good news, Dave, which is we've surpassed our goal this year. And the majority of this year's cohort is between 14 and 16 years old, with about 54% residing in the city and 46% residing in the county. So orientation did begin this past week or this week, and the work experience begins Monday and concludes August 5th. And the corporate internship program is beginning on June 13th and is going to conclude August 5th. And we have, which is terrific, 38 young people in corporate internships with 18 hosts this year, which is really tremendous. So again, I want to thank our corporate partners. There are many, but obviously the county, the city, the conference, PNC, UPMC, and many others. Really appreciate your support of this program. I know there's going to be a closing ceremony for Learn and Earn, and I hope you'll all come and join us. It's great to show support. Any questions? And a big thanks to Susie and her team before obviously Susie's transition to her new job. I mean, this was, again, like every year, a great collaboration, but also a great lift to do this. So
We always should be thanking Susie.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think it's two things worth mentioning. One, I think we've had an unprecedented level of cooperation with the mayor's office, which has been refreshing. Look, hasn't turned into firm action yet, but we have lots of discussion, including one next week, right, Rob? Do we meet the mayor next week again?
Correct, on the 28th.
Yeah, so that's been helpful. We take for granted your cooperation, Aaron, which is critical to our program, but getting the city engaged in a positive way, proactive way, has been very helpful. He's very interested in the work we're doing, and we're anxious to continue to leverage that. Also, I think we had bumps when we started this, and I think we ought to make an effort to reach back out to our corporate pals and tell them, A, how well it's going, and they're obviously hyper concerned about this issue as well. So we may want to make sure they know what we're doing and how we're doing and what the results of it.
Good point.
May I ask Deb quickly,
Sure.
in what industries are the employers for the most part? Just a general answer.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Susie on that. She knows more of the details.
Paul, do you want to take this one? Do you want me to?
Just something
Am
general.
I present? So there are quite a few in healthcare. UPMC and AHN have both taken several interns. The city of Pittsburgh in their Department of Mobility and Planning have taken several interns. Allegheny County. We have several in construction, several in financial services, and quite a few working in nonprofit organizations as well at their kind of corporate office.
We're really not penetrating the corporate world yet, so we need to keep focusing on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this? Thank you for your leadership as always, Ms. Deborah. Nancy, your hand's up. I don't know if you have ongoing questions or you just forgot to put your hand up. Okay, Erin,
Put it down.
Erin Dalton, there she is.
Yep. I don't have any questions. I'm sorry if you thought I did.
No, you're up next.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Yeah. So I've got at least Seth Chiswick on the phone and maybe Alex as well to talk a little bit about the benefits cliff. If that's if we're up on that part of the agenda now that we're ready to go. Seth, I know, has some slides. Hopefully this is what you guys are interested in learning. If not, Seth's really an expert in this, and so I'm pretty sure he can take most questions. So Seth, do you wanna share your screen and turn on your camera if you're comfortable and share?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Seth Chiswick. I work in the Office of Analytics, Technology, and Planning at DHS.
It says right under your name that you're an expert, Seth, so we're expecting a lot from you.
Oh, good. Well, hopefully I'll live up to that. Just start my slides here. Can you all see my full screen?
Sure.
So I want to do two things. And if it's okay, I'll talk for about 15 minutes. If anyone objects to that, speak now. But I want to first give an update on public benefits policies locally and how they've changed since the start of the pandemic. And then also talk about the issue of benefit cliffs and present the results of from a tool that we have at DHS that is able to look at that in detail. Yeah, so that's what I'll talk about right now. As far as policy updates, one of the biggest programs in our social safety net nationwide is SNAP, which is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as food stamps. And there were several major changes made to the SNAP program during the pandemic that are now scheduled to expire when the public health emergency ends. Some of the big ones worth mentioning is that there's been a waiver in effect for work requirements for able-bodied adults age 18 to 50 who do not have children. Now, that waiver was actually already in effect in most Pennsylvania counties, even prior to the pandemic, but noting that may change when the public health emergency ends. All SNAP households have also been receiving the maximum benefit for their household size since basically since the beginning of the pandemic. Those have been called emergency allotments. And that's been really an enhancement to the amount of food stamps that folks can receive. There is also now an expanded eligibility pathway for college students to receive SNAP benefits. Since January 2021, college students can now be eligible for SNAP if their FAFSA expected family contribution is $0. So that's a new thing that also is scheduled to expire at the end of the public health emergency. Some other SNAP related policy changes. There was a 15% increase across the board in the value of the food stamp vouchers. That expired back in September of last year. But then in October of last year, there was a 21% increase in benefits that took effect due to the USDA's revision of the Thrifty Food Plan, which is the cost basis that is used for SNAP benefits. Recertification periods are a big issue in SNAP. That's how often the family has to recertify that they are eligible for the vouchers. Those were extended during the pandemic, but they've reverted back to the pre-pandemic status as of the end of last year. There's also a pandemic EBT program that's still in effect in Pennsylvania. This program was giving cash to families whose children receive free and reduced price meals in their schools to make up for days of school that were missed due to COVID school closures. These payments are actually going out right now and in the coming weeks in a few installments. the benefit is $7.10 for each school day missed per child. This program is still kind of evolving, and there's still questions about what it's going to look like later this summer. But that is something that's happening in Pennsylvania. Also during the pandemic, since the very beginning, the USDA made all school meals completely free universally for all children. That program is scheduled to expire in just a few days, actually, on June 30th. And then the school meal program eligibility will kind of go back to the way it was before, which is being means tested. Another program that gets talked about a lot is Tanf, which is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. That's the cash welfare program in Pennsylvania. This program didn't change very much during the pandemic. There were some minor operational changes around like remote certifications and things like that. Very early in summer 2020, there was some one-time lump sum payments that were made using this program. They were called emergency assistance payments. Other than that, I think it's the most noteworthy thing with Tanf is that the enrollment in this program actually declined during the pandemic. And it has declined continuously now for over 10 years, and more broadly, really since welfare reform of the mid-90s. And this really shows that Tanf has really shrunk in its footprint in the social safety net. The program is totally not responsive to economic downturns anymore. And in my opinion, it's not really a relevant component of the social safety net anymore.
Have the dollars reduced that we receive, or just the number of people asking for it?
The size of the Pennsylvania block, so it's a block grant program, as you know. I think the nominal dollar amount has stayed constant since 1996. So in real terms, it's declined by a lot.
But does that mean we have unused monies?
I don't think that the money goes unused. The Tanf budget is interesting in Pennsylvania. Less than 20% of it is used on cash assistance. The other 80% is used for certain things that Partner4Work is involved in, and other, other types of services.
I was trying to give you a commercial for how we've been reallocating Tanf money cleverly, if that's the right word.
I see. Well, the flexibility is good. I think, there's lots of different ways that Tanf money can be used, and states have gotten creative for sure during the pandemic, and there's still more room to be creative. I'm a big fan of that. Anyway, Medicaid is a huge cornerstone program of the safety net. There's been a disenrollment freeze in effect since the public health emergency. That means that if a family starts earning too much money to be eligible, they have not been kicked off. So that is scheduled to expire when the PHE ends. And then the state will have to recertify tons of families in a very short amount of time, which state officials are already predicting that that's going to be a very messy and difficult process. So this is something that folks are keeping an eye on. Also, there was a brief policy in the second half of last year where if a family had received unemployment insurance, they received access to the expanded healthcare.gov premium tax credits. So that enabled them to get access to $0 premium insurance plans on the marketplace, but that expired at the end of last year. However, the American Rescue Plan Act, as I just said, they funded enhanced premium tax credits, and those are still in effect through at least the end of this year. And with those enhanced tax credits, when a family loses Medicaid, they're now able to get access to $0 premium plans on the ACA marketplace. So that's been a really nice policy that has smoothed the Medicaid cliff to some extent, which I'll show you in the simulation results.
Excuse me, Seth, we have a question from Laura.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt repeatedly, but have you guys or anyone else done any kind of assessment as to the number of individuals or families that will be impacted by each of these developments?
We have not done that as far as I know at Allegheny County DHS, but there's a lot of, Medicaid advocacy groups and, other organizations that are more involved with Medicaid administration that have definitely looked at that. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but there are lots of people I know, without giving an exact figure, there's many thousands of residents in Pennsylvania who fall in this kind of hole, but where they make a little bit too much to be on Medicaid, but the marketplace insurance plans that they could buy are not very affordable.
Right. Yeah. And I wasn't just limiting my question to the Medicaid issues, each of these, and this is incredibly helpful. So thank you. But I'm just sort of wondering if there's any, for each of them, if there's any indication of magnitude of impact. So thank you.
Yeah, I don't have those numbers. It's difficult to compute those, but there's definitely ballpark estimates out there that I could refer you to. Thanks for that. Just unemployment insurance briefly, I think most of you know that there was 3 main enhancements to unemployment insurance during COVID, but all 3 of them expired back in September of last year. There was the PUA, which gave benefits to workers who typically did not qualify for UI, such as self-employed. There was the PEUC, which extended the benefits beyond the usual 26 weeks. And there was the FPUC, which added an additional $300 per week. Those have all expired, and UI in Pennsylvania is pretty much back to normal, or the way it was before COVID. So there's just a few other programs. There's lots in our patchwork safety net. Supplemental security income is an important program for disabled, permanently disabled adults. There were no major changes to that during COVID, aside from some small operational changes. The LIHEAP program, which is energy assistance, the enrollment for LIHEAP just closed last week for the upcoming season. The benefits were increased last year using money from ARPA, but it's not clear yet, I don't think, if that increased benefits will continue for the upcoming season. ARPA also temporarily expanded the generosity of the earned income tax credit, specifically for childless adults, childless workers. And that was a major increase in the benefit size for that group. But that expired. That was just for last year. And so now the EITC for childless workers has gone back to being what it was before, which is very small. There was a few changes to the WIC program during COVID, mainly operational changes around remote eligibility determinations. I'm not sure if those are set to elapse at the end of the PHE. I think they are. And then finally, most of you know, there was the expanded child tax credit last year, funded by the American Rescue Plan. That was a dramatic expansion of cash transfers to families with children, but it expired and it was not renewed by Congress. I note that there's studies and estimates that have found that program in its brief existence reduced child poverty by something like 30%. So there was kind of a brief moment last year where we put a huge dent in child poverty, but that tax credit is now back to the way it used to be. Just the takeaways, as I see it from these policy developments, is that 2020 and 2021 were really watershed years for expanding and strengthening the social safety net, both locally and across the country. And these benefit enhancements that I listed kept a lot of families afloat during COVID through some dire times. The public health emergency is still in effect through I think, mid-July, but then the feds will need to extend it for another 90 days, or maybe they won't. And there are lots of policies that are slated to expire when that health emergency ends. And if that transition is very abrupt, then I think a lot of families are at risk of being left out to dry. So that we need to manage that transition very carefully at all levels of government. Another issue I always mention when thinking about the safety net is that the minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour, as most of you know, in Pennsylvania. It hasn't been increased in 15 years. It does not appear to be close to being increased, although there's always bills in the state legislature to implement Governor Wolf's plan to bring it gradually up to $15 an hour. There's a living wage calculator that I think is a great resource at MIT. And that calculator says that a single parent in Allegheny County who works full-time with 2 children must earn $10.56 an hour just to reach the poverty line, and then almost $40 an hour to attain what this calculator considers to be a living wage. So there's a lot of assumptions baked into those numbers and estimates, but I think it just puts the minimum wage in context, although I fully admit that the minimum wage debate is more complicated than that, suffice it to say. If you'll allow me a few more minutes, I want to briefly present some results from a new resource that we have at DHS. We call it a public benefits calculator, but it's also called the Family Resource Simulator. This is publicly available, and I can share the link with you all in these slides. It basically simulates the net budget of a hypothetical family in Allegheny County, and you can change a lot of the parameters and inputs about what that family looks like. And it basically spits out how much of all different kinds of benefits that family would receive as their earnings rise. And then also what their total budget looks like after accounting for like everything. So it kind of shows that family's path towards financial stability as they earn more money. And here I'll present a few outputs for a hypothetical household that has 1 parent, age 26, 2 young children, ages 1 and 3. They live in the city of Pittsburgh, and the parent works full-time and is not disabled. So for the first output is for Tanf. And the idea of these outputs is just when we talk about benefit cliffs, this is really what we're referring to. It's the question of how does a benefit phase out as the family earns more money. So Tanf, as you can see, is not really a cliff. It's more of a taper, and it phases out at about it hits 0 at about $10,000 a year, which is far less than the poverty line for a family of 3. This is the phase out schedule for SNAP. You can see it also is more of a ramp than a cliff. And for time's sake, I won't really go into the details of like why the slope changes at different kink points, but I can explain that in gory detail if you want. This is the earned income tax credit schedule, which is kind of a familiar looking graph. This gets shown a lot. The EITC is an anti-cliff, at least at the low income ranges, meaning as the family earns more money, they get more EITC benefits. So it's definitely a work incentive, but then it hits the plateau region and then it phases out at a fairly high income range. I'll focus a minute on this. This is the family's healthcare costs, and this includes their Medicaid and CHIP and subsidized marketplace plans. So this one does have what I call cliffs. And this is just premium costs, so not out-of-pocket expenses. So the family pays no premiums up to about $30,000 a year. Then the parent loses their Medicaid coverage, but under pandemic policies, they still can get access to $0 premium plans through the marketplace premium tax credits. And so then their premiums start to creep upward as they earn more money. The first jump is when the children lose Medicaid, then the costs keep climbing. Then there's 2 other cost sharing tiers of the CHIP program, which is for children's health insurance. Then the children lose CHIP. And what's interesting is when the children lose CHIP and go on to the parents' ACA marketplace plan, the healthcare costs actually go down. And that's kind of a funny result in this scenario, because the CHIP premiums are actually more expensive in this tier than the marketplace plan. But that's because the marketplace plan doesn't cover as much stuff as CHIP. So it's a higher risk plan. So when we talk about cliffs in the safety net and possible disincentives to earning an extra dollar, there's definitely some of that going on in healthcare costs. But the mother of all benefit cliffs is childcare. This is by far the most impactful cliff in the entire safety net right now. So this is the childcare costs that the family faces as they earn more money, and the scale is so large that this should actually be sloping upward, but it looks basically horizontal. The family's childcare costs are kept low because they receive childcare works subsidies in Pennsylvania, so they pay us a fixed copay that increases only very modestly with their earnings, but then all at once they lose their childcare work subsidy when they earn $1 extra, and then suddenly they have to pay for market rate childcare, which is incredibly expensive. This simulator estimates the cost of market rate childcare using the Pennsylvania Ocdel market rate childcare survey, which is a periodic survey that is done by the state government. So obviously there's a lot of work that needs to be done to address childcare issues. It's also worth mentioning that childcare works enrollment actually declined, as far as I know, during COVID, which is kind of disturbing because a lot of families qualified for that program that didn't used to. I think a lot of that has to do with the workforce shortage in the childcare industry. So lots of policy issues there. I'm going to skip Section 8 vouchers for time. This is the family's net budget. So that's their total income minus their total expenses. And this graph kind of summarizes the family's path to self-sufficiency. So as they earn more money, what happens to their net resources? And you can see it's far from a linear path. There's lots of like mini cliffs and ramps, and the slope kind of flattens and then gets steeper. And then there's a massive cliff due to the childcare cliff. So when the family is earning $52,000 a year, they only have about $7,000 left over after covering their basic necessities. I think that's a pretty striking finding. So yeah, this is something we can simulate for all different family types. And I think this is useful for policy analysis, but also for advocacy and for just kind of communicating to people what it really looks like for a low-income family to be trying to get to self-sufficiency and stability. And on the topic of cliffs, I took this graph and basically took the derivative of it for you math people. And that's really the marginal tax rate that the family faces on their next dollar of earnings. And as you can see, it jumps all over the place. It's negative for a while, probably due to the earned income tax credit. And then it becomes, it's over 100% at certain points. And I only did this up to the point of the childcare cliff. because if I included that, it would completely blow out the graph. But yeah, so this is the marginal tax rates that this hypothetical family would face. And that is all I had for you. I'm happy to talk more offline about this work or other issues and questions about these programs. I would just add that, you know, Allegheny County DHS does not directly administer most of the programs that I talked about. Most of them are administered at the state or federal level, but it's nonetheless something that we are, you know, still involved in our mission of helping disadvantaged families in Allegheny County. So we try to keep a close eye on these developments and align ourselves with the state and federal rules. I'll stop there.
It's a disturbing picture you just painted, Seth. I've never seen it presented like that.
It is. It's very striking, and you know, lots of room for improvement in a lot of areas, obviously.
Wow, that's a big mountain to climb. Laurel?
So first of all, thank you. That level of analysis was just incredibly helpful. I heard it in 3 big buckets relevant to this group. Number one, I heard that there are what I call navigating a pathway along the top of the cliff. Certain places where there's a cliff coming to certain benefits, but there are others coming alongside that will mitigate the impact. With respect to that, I think there were 2 or 3 categories you described. With respect to that part of the cliff, I think it can be useful to do education and some shepherding to make sure that the impacted families do move over to the new benefit that mitigates the cliff. So I think if we identify that, you know, category, that's one set of strategies. The second is places where remote options are scheduled to go away. And I would really like us to see that our group sort of drill down on what those remote options are, because we've talked about before on this board that remote options are a partial solution to the childcare issue, which is, you know, coming up here as the centerpiece problem you've identified. So I do think that if we can, again, drill down and come up with a short list of where remote options are going away, take a look at what we may be able to do to at least preserve some of those remote options or recreate them. So particularly where they have an impact on childcare and single parents. The third category is those that are truly going away. And I think that it might be really helpful for our staff to perhaps have some ongoing conversations and say, with respect to those, what is the impact on our cohort, our clients, right? The people that we work with, what's that impact going to be? Try to get an assessment of how many people are going to be impacted so that we can prioritize our response and then have some kind of assessment about what, if anything, we need to do programmatically to address those. So I just throw that out as a potential decision tree for us to react to some of what the terrific analysis we've heard here.
Yeah. Aaron, figure this out, will you?
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. I mean, there's particularly with Medicaid too, there's when the enrollment, sort of the requirement to re-enroll comes up. This is something we're focused on a lot, trying to educate our providers, which would include workforce providers, about making sure that people get the mail and are able to re-enroll. Keeping that higher would greatly benefit the people. We're happy to share our materials on that, and, you know, obviously anything else, but that's something we're particularly focused on right now.
I guess thank you is the right thing to say.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Ike has his hand up, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Ike.
Hey, it's tremendous. It's a tremendous tool, and well presented. What goes through my mind is it seems like you have the understanding of what creates the inequities in all those charts. I would assume that what we would like to see would be sort of a kind of straight kind of ramp, that in some sane way disengages public assistance as people's income replaces it. But what seems to me can come out of this is if in this level of detail what pieces of what programs create a negative to that ideal, does that allow us to put forward some sort of report to public officials that would give them a roadmap to start doing advocacy around these various, what you call ramps or levels or, all those places, and maybe a priority of which programs could, what actions could be taken that would do the most dramatic improvement in what you've presented to us.
Yeah, Aaron, is this something our elected officials do not know?
I think they're aware. I think they're aware of it. I mean, a lot of this is stuff that has to change at the federal level. I mean, I'll
That's what I figured.
the comment too. And there isn't, it seems to me much bipartisan support. I mean, just the very idea that the child tax credit went down without any, without any modifications, something that so clearly reduced childhood poverty, just suggests that some of these safety net issues are stuck. I'm not certainly as expert as Seth for sure in this topic. So I would defer to him too. I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea to make sure people are aware of the challenges at the state and local level. And for our providers, helping people to navigate this. I mean, again, Seth can comment here, but there's reality and then there's the perceptions of where cliffs hit, and those aren't always aligned. And so people will, not take a job that may not hurt them if there was more objective, like this tool could help them to identify the true costs of taking the job to their benefits. So because there really are, I think, probably some perceptions that work against people moving up the income ladder. But Seth, do you want to add?
Yeah, I think it's right to say that there's a lot of attention to the issue of benefit cliffs and high marginal tax rates in the safety net. I don't think it's an appreciated issue. I know there's a ton of research that is sponsored by the federal government into this issue. And actually this tool that I presented was part of a federal government project that we were a grantee of. So I think they're aware of it. And one example of action on it is that in Tanf in Pennsylvania, I think in 2020, they actually did reduce the phase out rate by offering introducing a 50% earnings. There's a 50% disregard on earnings, but they introduced a new disregard for work expenses. So I think that was definitely out of a recognition of let's let families keep a little bit more of the next dollar that they earn as they move off of TANF. But I think you run into very tricky questions about what the optimal design of these programs would be, because if you make the benefit phase out more gradually, that's inherently changing the distribution of who gets what and how much they get. So it's not straightforward to think about, what should that phase out rate look like and where should the cliff be? I think in general, the cliff should be at a level of earnings that is somewhat high, so at least the family doesn't plunge into deep poverty when they go over the cliff. But beyond that, I kind of appreciate the difficulty of designing an optimal program. But I think workforce development is very closely connected with this question, because if you have good paying jobs and jobs that have opportunities for advancement and promotion and kind of climbing the ladder, it makes it easier to overcome these cliffs and to kind of exit these benefit programs more smoothly. So I guess I would just say it's
It looks
complicated.
to me, Seth, like I should not earn more than $9,999 or go right to 50,000. Is that about right? If I have kids and I'm a young family.
Yeah, I think, I mean, so you're saying that there's that kind of purgatory.
Yeah, I can't afford to take a job for 11,000.
I think it depends on the job, you know, and also keep in mind that this simulation was assuming a family that receives like everything under the sun that is available. In reality, most families are not on every benefit. And so that changes what that graph looks like. But I think if you're talking about a low wage job, then yeah, there's a pretty big chunk of your earnings spectrum, like you said, where you're not climbing very fast.
Going back, you lose 21,000 between 10 and 15. If you're earning between 10 and 15, you earn 21, and that doesn't count any impact from childcare or healthcare.
Are you referring to the graph that I just showed?
Yeah. Well, we can't solve it today, but
yeah.
Ouch.
Hey, Seth, can I, one last question. In the earnings number that you showed, did you include their value of benefits? So like, for example, if they get healthcare as part of their wages, is that factored in there or not?
It's not, but it could be. So in the calculator, you can choose it when the family loses Medicaid, you can choose whether they get their health insurance through their employer or through the marketplace. In the results that I showed, they get it through the marketplace. But if you make them get it through their employer, the graph looks different. The marketplace actually is a smoother cost ramp than the employer provided insurance.
Seth, can I ask you, you said you didn't want to talk much about Section 8 housing, but affordable housing is certainly much on everyone's screen right now and is sort of a area where there is bipartisan support, I think, and might be a door through which these conversations can be made. Can you talk briefly about Section 8 housing?
Yeah. So the calculator includes that. Section 8 is hugely important if the family is lucky enough to receive it. I mean, the most noteworthy thing about that program is that only 25% of eligible families actually receive it. It's a limited supply. You get into a lottery and you have to get lucky. And that includes the vouchers and the property-based Section 8 that's attached to a property. But if you're lucky enough to get it, at very low earnings levels, it's a huge benefit because you only pay a fixed percentage of your earnings in rent. So it keeps your housing costs low. And then given all of the research on mobility, being able to move to opportunity, it's a huge benefit. So that's kind of the government subsidy piece of the housing puzzle or debate. There's also, of course, the supply side. But even when you expand supply dramatically, like we should be doing, I think subsidies still play a key role in helping the really low income families.
So do you see a trend toward expanding it, decreasing it, or any role that advocacy could play in that area?
I'm admittedly not super aware of the trend I mean, this is all managed by the federal government through HUD.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's any movement towards dramatically expanding the supply of the vouchers.
Yeah. And then there's probably folks on this call who know more perhaps than either Seth or I about other local deals to at least improve the amount of affordable housing, which is different than the voucher programs, but at least affordability. So there's that, varies a lot by, from city to city. And yeah, so they're probably, it's another big topic that we could delve into for sure.
The affordable housing issue for developers is a huge hurdle. There's no subsidy available to help a developer add that affordable housing component. So it's holding back a lot of development, which creates jobs and so on. It's sort of a circular function that we haven't figured out yet. That's for sure. But it's virtually impossible to comply with the affordable housing formulas that Mayor Gainey's talking about for most real estate developers, unless there's subsidy available, and there isn't any.
Right.
It's a challenge.
Thank you. Yeah.
But I guess we better spend more time on this, but we're a little bit over schedule. Unless somebody has a quick question they wanted to add. Seth, thank you.
Yeah, I do. I have one question.
Go ahead.
Is, we're talking about all the great things that were workforce development, and you mentioned this before that this goes hand in hand. Outside of the wage piece, and more brought up about benefits being part of it, what's the one piece of advice that you would say when designing workforce development programs? What should we look at? Is it the child care? Is it, what would you advise us?
I think there's really exciting research coming out from rigorous evaluations of sectorally aligned career pathway and training programs that I think, to me, are kind of the most exciting findings in a long time in workforce development. Things like, nursing programs, things that are really tailored to local demand. However, the great results from those programs are mainly for workers who are at a certain level of preparation in their education, their soft skills, who are kind of ready to, get into that career pathways program. And I think the challenge now is to think about how to extend that model to folks who are maybe not as prepared. So the more disadvantaged workers who have, less experience in the labor market, other challenges in their lives. And this just dovetails with DHS also. If we can kind of expand that career pathway model to be open to, or kind of connected to something that can get even lower skill people in. That's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. That's just one thought.
Yeah, Duke, I don't know if you have any comments on that, but that's precisely what we're trying to accomplish with the programs that we described earlier. As we're talking about it, I was thinking, and we should have you and Rob figure out how we can get to your population in a way that we could communicate those opportunities. Duke, I think you're dealing with this every day. Did you want to add anything to that?
Obviously, within the healthcare provider space, you're right, we're dealing with it every day. So any opportunities we can to connect folks to the jobs that we have available and the things we can provide would be awesome. So
both healthcare systems are trying to figure out a bridge
absolutely
between the people you're talking about and the opportunities that they need to fill. It's complicated. And by the way, it not only adds costs to healthcare system in terms of limited access to labor, but those who, if you're underwater, the first thing you're going to cancel is your health insurance.
Exactly.
And that provides additional, both systems are heavily subsidizing that population for healthcare. Significant numbers. So if we can find a way to create an ROI on some of these programs, we might be able to bridge substantially the problem. I don't know if we can solve it, but we have an opportunity to try to take advantage of this disaster. So I think unless there's a question, we have to cut this off for now, but we certainly need to continue to focus on this. So thank you, Seth. That was great. Thank you, Aaron, as always. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Seth.
Rob, you are now in overtime. Your comments are over.
Well, I just want to start off by just saying, Seth and Aaron, and we've also have talked a lot with Alex also. Thank you so much for how your department has been so helpful to us. That was a great presentation, and it's really dramatic to see that, especially that childcare clip. And I'm always facing the question, when I'm in a community where I talk to employers and they're saying, well, how come we can't find people? And you know, this is a reason. People make economic decisions as they navigate, you know, public assistance programs, and you know, they make ones that benefit them. But it also, I think, drives the point of this is why, you know, these dual enrollment programs and reaching people much younger is so important. So that sometimes when we get folks in the job centers, they've layered on a few different barriers, and then they have to ultimately make a decision if they want to make over $50,000 or not. And it's so important to reach young people before they hit that point. And you know, that's the reason that we are, you know, taking the approach of really doubling down on getting as many young people into career pathways as possible, because it really helps mitigate, you know, these cliffs and decisions later on in life. So we appreciate the work that you do, and we're looking forward to continuing to work with you to not only just identify solutions, but advocate around specific policies that, you know, on a state level and federal level that mitigate some of the effects of, you know, people making more money to some degree. So thank you for that. And thank you, Chairman Malone, for introducing Dr. Wesley. As you know, we officially welcomed Carl on April 1st as the Chief Program and Innovation Officer here. And during that time, also, Susie officially transitioned to lead Partner4Work's Policy and Research Department. So Carl oversees the programmatic functions at Partner4Work, including the adult, youth, learn and earn, special programs, programs specific to returning citizens, and specific programs around improving job quality. So as a long-term workforce development professional dedicated to supporting individuals, families, returning citizens, we look forward to Carl infusing innovation into our programming. So welcome, Carl. And as Susie builds out her department, we anticipate it will focus on key areas, including, you know, public-facing research, as we just seen, industry partnerships with gaining intelligence from businesses and the community, and project management and policy and advocacy. So to help set the stage for our policy and advocacy work, we are hosting a retreat tomorrow to determine the role of policy, research, and advocacy in heightening the impact of Partner4Work's kind of footprint in the region. So this will be facilitated by Kate Dewey. So a small group of board members and non-board members will help define policy and research and advocacy in the context of Partner4Work's mission. So we're looking forward to that tomorrow. And ultimately, the conversation will result in the staff having a better understanding of the views of board members and community representatives in regards to policy and research considerations. And it'll ultimately allow us to infuse these considerations into our strategic planning that we'll go through this summer. So any questions on that? Okay, so Partner4Work released the RFQ late last month for strategic planning, and bidders have until Monday to submit proposals. So we anticipate going through a full strategic planning process this summer with board, staff, stakeholders to begin mid-summer and conclude with a report by year end. So if you would be interested in scoring proposals, I know a few folks that reached out and said that they had interest. Please let us know. We do need reviewers for those proposals. And that should start up in a few weeks once we kind of have them all in next Monday. So please let me know. On to the mayor's office, as Chairman Malone talked about. Wanted to bring aboard that I and other members of the staff have been building relationships with the mayor's office and under the leadership of Mayor Gainey. Recently, myself, Chairman Malone, met with Mayor Gainey, Chief of Staff Wheatley to discuss the mayor's priorities. We talked about the mayor's prosperity plan and Partner4Work having not only influence, but to help along with creating this plan with the mayor's office. We believe our engagement strategy is gaining traction. Within the last month, the mayor has frequently and publicly supported and advocated for Learn and Earn, as well as making connections on our behalf with entities that we haven't worked with yet in the past. So as Chairman Malone mentioned, we have several meetings with the new administration next week. And we'll continue to kind of build that relationship there, and hopefully by our next board meeting, we'll have a representative from the mayor's office engaged in our board. Any questions there about our engagement with the mayor's team? Okay. So September board meeting. So dependent on the trajectory of COVID, we expect to move to a hybrid model for our meeting in September. So for those attending in person, we plan to meet and showcase our new downtown PA career link on Penn Avenue. Although we will have a virtual option available for those who will participate remotely. So I know a lot of folks have been asking for opportunities to kind of meet face-to-face and reconnect. So we will be hosting a Partner4Work board happy hour from 5 to 7 on July 27th at the rooftop of the Hotel Monaco. I think that's the Kimpton Hotel Monaco. So Jen will send more official invites out. So mark your calendars for that. But there will be no official action taken at that meeting. And finally, I wanted to share some of the outcomes related to the leadership of our board and HR committee. So with the leadership of Dave Copeland, Catherine McEvely, Kate McLaughlin, Linda Topoleski, we are deploying an online performance evaluation system that we believe will track performance in real time, leave little to manager subjectivity, and is built on core competencies needed for individual positions at Partner4Work. So in addition, we have mapped out career pathways for specific classifications and pay ranges for better transparency and to improve employee retention. So the classification system and pay ranges will be deliberated this summer with the committee and rolled out to staff in the first quarter of the fiscal year 2023. So any questions about that? All right, hearing none, that concludes my report.
Thanks, Rob. And by the way, the other trip we have planned is to go out to Detroit to meet with their workforce board. And among the things we're considering, I think, Aaron, this would apply to you too. They made their career links more focused on smaller, but in the neighborhoods, so we can get better access. So we're going to be talking about that with Detroit to see how that's worked. Any other questions for Rob? Any other business for the crew? Then I think we'll call an executive session. And who has to jump off? Susie? Who else? Jen? Can someone else handle the call, Jen?
You can switch it to me if you want, Jen.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we're going to go into an executive session now?
Yeah, first I have to ask for public comment.
Yes,
Laura, you
thank
can
you.
remind me. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, let's go to executive session. Just give that to Deb, please, Jen.
Yep.
Okay, anybody have feel the need to discuss anything in executive session? I know we only have a few minutes, but I do feel it's good governance to go to make sure everybody has an opportunity. Nope.
I thought this morning's presentations were tremendous. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
Really, really.
Rob is increasingly being recognized in the community as the go-to for workforce, which I think is very helpful and long overdue.
Dave, is there anything you want us thinking about going into tomorrow, or that you'd like to see in terms of performance from us for tomorrow?
No, I think that started, this was an outreach. By the way, I've never been on a not-for-profit board where people voluntarily give up part of their Saturday. So thanks everybody who's able to attend. And I know we scheduled this before the weather turned so nicely. So I don't know if we're losing anybody, but I was tempted, I must say. No, I think this was a result of a conversation we started 2 meetings ago, where it was clear that I think Josh Paul had brought a number of policy issues. I got heavily engaged and we just ran out of time. So I think we're just going to continue those conversations. I don't think there's any preparation necessary, if that's what you're suggesting, Mark.
I'm sorry. May I ask what non-board members will be involved, or categories of non-board members?
You may ask, but I do not know.
Okay, that's fair.
I was unaware of this thing tomorrow. Was that just certain board members invited,
No.
or was the whole board invited?
Everyone was invited.
I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah,
I couldn't
did not know
attend, but
about
I
it as well.
didn't know about it either.
You're
Neither
kidding.
did I. This is
And I will tell you, the last board meeting I didn't attend because I didn't receive an invite.
Ouch.
And so I'm not sure if I got one for today's meeting, obviously, but I think sometimes there may be a disconnect on the distribution list probably.
That's a problem. Who was not invited to tomorrow?
I don't,
Jeez. That's disturbing. I have no answer for that one.
I mean, it's possible we missed stuff.
And
They've.
Will Allen's hand
Sorry.
is up, I think, too.
It's like nobody was invited.
Was it?
I wasn't sure. I thought I probably missed something. The team did follow up with me. I can't make it, but you might, like, it is on my calendar though for tomorrow. I don't know, Carrie. Like,
It's on my calendar for tomorrow, but I don't know who was invited.
Wow.
I knew I couldn't attend, but I was surprised to hear that it was happening.
Huh. Well, we had it scheduled for the day of the marathon. I don't know if you remember that. And then the day before, we realized no one was going to be able to get downtown. So we switched.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, so maybe it went out with that.
Yeah. But then
Maybe it went out with that notice.
Well, I would apologize if I was responsible, but I'm not.
Hey,
Guess I am.
David, would it make sense to ask that it be sent around again to all board members,
I will do that. Yeah.
triple checking that everybody's on there, and understanding that with such short notice and a Saturday, people might not be able to make it, but I think that's an important correction.
Of course.
yeah. I don't think I got a notice from the first one. If it was originally scheduled in May for marathon weekend, I was unaware of that one also. So there's certainly a disconnect, and I certainly would have I would have made myself available had I known. But it's virtually impossible with less than a day's notice.
No, I completely understand. I'm sorry about that.
And Dave, it may just be that it something previous was rescheduled and it didn't pick up recently added board members. That's what it
Well,
sounds like, maybe.
If one of you got dropped, I could accept that, but if virtually everybody got dropped, clearly we screwed up.
And it sounds like some important decisions are going to be made.
There's no decisions, I don't think, Nancy. These are
Okay.
policy issues we're going to discuss. I'll resend it. Whoever can come. I'd hate to cancel it at this point. Part of me would hate to cancel it.
On the other hand.
All I could do now is resend it. I'm sorry. And then we can report out whatever we discuss. Ugh, I don't like things like that. We also need to address Rob's compensation, which I was going to try to do today, but we're out of time now. So we'll. Would anybody care if we delegated that to the executive committee so we don't have to get everybody together?
Fine.
Okay, we can get moving. There's nothing major, but it's a result of that comp study that we did with 3C. So we have some suggestions. So we'll do that with the executive committee. I'm guessing that's important to Rob. Okay, I'm sorry, guys.
Not your fault.
Well, kind of it is. I'm responsible. But I will make sure it doesn't happen again, and I'll make sure that we get a new invite out. So I'll do that call. And Rob has had, he and I have had a number of discussions about some things falling through the crack administratively. So he's going to be telling you about some changes he wants to make with his staff at some point here. Okay, well, I hope everybody that I see tomorrow enjoys the meeting. I hope everybody else has a great weekend, and I really appreciate all of your time and energy. And obviously, when you see the reports we have a lot more work to do. And you know, I'm not sure anybody else is doing it but us, so let's keep plugging away. All right, gang, have a good weekend.
Great meeting.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.